I was 21 when I left my homeland, Scotland, and moved to Barcelona. Now, in the time preceding that move, I had eczema, which was mostly concentrated on my legs and inner elbows. And to tell you the truth, I didn't think much of it. Coming from Scotland, my mind-body disconnect was exceedingly strong. So I had these dry patches. I itched them a little bit. They bothered me slightly. My understanding for their appearance and existence was that I had changed my clothes washing, laundry detergent and to a cheaper one. I was a student and I considered that given it had started around that time, it must have just been down to that. Also being a student, I do recall that I was just proceeding to use it, just suffering and not bothering too much about it. Actually, that's not true. I think I did change it. I also moved around to different places and used different detergents and it didn't go away. So I didn't take the time to stop and really think about that or face that. And I see that in a lot of people I work with. Once I have a story that makes sense, I'm sticking to it. Nonetheless, I moved to Barcelona and someone mentioned to me how they had stopped eating gluten and everything in their life had changed. And I started to investigate paleo lifestyle. If you don't know about that, it's sort of caveman approach to eating and living. And I was inspired by that. And I also had a relationship with bread in particular that I was not really conscious of, but that it had always been this comfort food. It had always been what my mum had given me, actually a dry piece of bread if I was hungry, mostly. I had a relationship with it. I also had a relationship whereby my mother had told me if I ate too much bread, I'd get fat. And this was kind of a cycling theme for me. I didn't think of any of this at the time, however. I just did come to a point where I realised I want to try living without that. And my skin cleared up and my energy improved. And as I continued with this paleo lifestyle, somewhere along the line, to tell you the truth, it became about weight loss. It became about meeting a standard for myself and validating myself. But for the most part, my awareness was with me being much happier, much healthier without gluten. And so I did identify as someone with gluten intolerance. And if anyone's ever given up something like bread or sugar, you know that once it's been out of your system for a while, even a little bit coming into your system causes a strong response. Usually it gets stronger over time, right? So this experience of having an intolerance to food is something I really lived with for a good few years, and something I had a very positive experience in eliminating the food. I felt powerful. I felt that I had recognized my own problem and solved it. So it really was a positive experience for me until I met an Italian, one that I fell for and one that became my boyfriend, and who knew all the best places to eat Italian food in Barcelona, and who I actually in the end moved to Italy to live with. And so I was being tempted then with dripping cheesy pizza, with ravioli handmade, with the most delicious tarts and cakes, etc. And he also came from a background where his mum was a healer, and they didn't really believe in gluten intolerance. And so they were quite determined that I should not really believe in it either. And so they would present me with this food and say, go on, just have a little bit. And intolerance is not the same as an allergy. Now, this was some time ago. So in Italy, it really was not common to be gluten intolerant. Strangely enough, by now, which is a good more than 10 years later, it's very popular, just like everywhere in the world. And there is a huge industry built on gluten-free products, if anyone has noticed. There is big profits to be made from gluten intolerance. And there's, yes, on a personal level, like a big sense of relief and empowerment that comes with recognizing this isn't really agreeing with me, I'll just take it out. And the discipline required to do that and the results of improved feeling when you do, like, again, definitely mean that it is a sort of trend that is highly supported and makes a lot of rational sense. But what followed for me unveiled a deeper layer of what's happening anytime we're experiencing food intolerance of any kind. And I hope you keep listening, because it also speaks a lot to generally the topic of intolerance in our world and the healing that is possible for all of us when we return to our natural way of functioning. So for me, this was not something I went looking for, not at all. I was very happy with my solution to my intolerance. And when I was in Italy being presented with these foods and being teased and taunted and forced almost to try them, I was having very strong reactions. I was bloating everywhere. I was just retaining water in my face, all over my body. My rings wouldn't fit just after consuming a little bit of gluten. And most notably, my digestive system was rocked. And this is really common for people, right? The digestive system goes out of whack once you let the gluten back in. And I found myself one weekend with this Italian man's mother at her school in Milan, learning something called riflessologia facciale, which means facial reflexology. I had no idea what it was. I could barely understand anything that was being spoken of. They were speaking in Italian, translating for me into English. When it came to the organs, my translator couldn't really translate. I didn't even know the name of the organs in English. It was just not my area of expertise whatsoever. I had studied economics, right? Didn't like biology, didn't like the sciences at all. Clinical terminology I actually always had an intolerance to as well, but we'll come to that later. So what happened was I was asked, how does this gluten affect you? And we boiled it down to the main, strongest response I was having was a slow colon, constipation, right? That was the most bothersome and tangible change that I would experience in my body when I consumed gluten at that point. And so very simply, that was the place where I was taught to perform facial reflexology, to concentrate on that so-called symptom or result physically that I was experiencing when I consumed gluten. I didn't understand much at that time. I would happily explain to you in depth now what was taking place as I did that. But I'm happy to make a video if someone wants as well, just comment below. But I was massaging and stimulating the area of my face connected to the colon. I had no expectation that this would do anything. In fact, if I thought anything about it, I thought it was a pile of piss, right? I had no expectation, and I only performed this gesture daily on my face because this mother kept coming home with beautiful cakes and cooking pasta and sort of insisting that I try it, and meanwhile asking me how this reflex practice was going. And I guess I wanted to keep her happy. So I was kind of rolling my eyes as I stimulated the face. So easy to do, just a few moments every single day. I was uninterested, to tell you the truth. But at some point, about 2 weeks in, I noticed, wow, my digestion has actually really shifted. And actually, this slow colon was an issue I had my whole life. The constipation was something, especially when traveling as a child, that I had always had. And it was changing. And I was being much less affected by the gluten when I did consume it. And I remember looking at myself at one point in the toilet mirror, just like, I must believe in this on some level, right? Because we've been taught that placebo is about your belief. I was like, well, I must believe in this. And I was shocked because I really consciously did not believe in it at all. But I had enough sense to sort of shrug and say, okay, well, I will continue and see what this does. And again, to reiterate, I was not trying to become tolerant to gluten. It was not in my interest. I had a lot of ideas about how gluten was really unhealthy, poisonous, we shouldn't be eating it anyway, from the paleo theory, right? So Accompanying this gesture I was doing on my face, which I did probably for about 2 months, 21 days, followed by a 7-day break a couple of times. I also started to, and I wasn't really aware of the intelligence of what I was doing here, but I started to look at gluten that was in front of me before consuming it and just notice how I felt. And actually what I noticed was mostly that there was a story running that this is poison, this is bad. And I started to just question that. I was questioning a few things at that time. It's like, do I really know that that's true? Like, I've read about it and I've got experiences that seem to be evidence that that is true, but do I really actually know that to be true? And I was like, no. So I didn't try and flip any belief or change anything in the way that I was thinking. I just acknowledged that that was essentially a thought. And it might not even be mine. And it might not even be true. And I just allowed myself to neutralize the way I was looking at and feeling about the food that I was supposedly reluctantly consuming. And I wasn't trying to enjoy it more. I still had some interfering sort of thoughts around it, etc., etc. But over time, the response my body was having dropped. I didn't have any more reaction to the gluten. And that happened, probably within 4 to 5 months. I was working also on my hormones with the reflexology as well. I made up for lost time after that. I lived in Italy for about 4 or 5 more years. And I've regained a love for gluten and all things glutinous and I also went to a new level of empowerment whereby I understood if an item of food, specific item of food, is causing a response within me, it's specific to me and that food, right? Because my friend is eating the food and he's not having the response. It's always specific. I don't care how popular gluten intolerance has become. If 2 people can eat the same item and react differently, it's about the individual, not the food. And I started to have a more holistic point of view whereby I understood, okay, there's a consciousness within this food as well. And I have a story that's very specific about this food that my friend doesn't have. And that's always the case. And by consuming it, to have my digestive system in particular flare, that's not a message about the food as much as it's a message about me. Because I was learning that the digestive organs are very connected to our emotions, especially stuck emotions. And our emotions are connected to stories, I would now say, especially stuck stories. That is, stories we identify with about who we are and how we take it that life works. So, all in all, to my kind of surprise at that time, I was able to consume gluten. I was not bloating anymore. I did not have any more digestive issues. I started to really enjoy it. I started to eat it all the time, etc., etc. And it really was, in the end, a very, very simple process. And when I think back now of the various things that I so-called healed with the help of facial reflexology and the many thousands of people I supported to heal different things inside of them, for receipts, go to my website, check out the Reflex Maps course. Some of the many testimonials over the years are on there. I haven't done a great job of keeping the oldest and most original ones, but in the work that I do now, which is really about interpersonal relationships, the same exact premise applies. And so how did I heal these things? Was it the reflexology that healed me? The reflexology was a tool. And bringing attention to my thoughts and releasing them was another kind of technique. But really what I did was I came closer to my natural functioning. So there's all this emphasis in the world about your beliefs and your mindset and choosing the experience you want to have. But my experience was rather the opposite. I didn't think it was possible to heal from gluten intolerance, and it wasn't a goal of mine. But when I just came in touch and allowed my body to function more naturally, and if you've ever experienced reflexology like I used to teach it, lying down, receiving that treatment is an ultimate relaxation experience. The more you just be, rather than do, which is what so many people who are trying to heal are doing. They're running around, trying different things, paying different people, involving themselves in all these different rituals and techniques and methodologies and doing all the right things, quote unquote. My experience was the opposite. It was finding this stillness and silence within me and exploring that and opening to that and being present with that more and more and more. And the result then just kind of happened and just kind of surprised me, but also it just was. It wasn't even that terribly exciting. And as my work has developed, I would say it's the same exact requirement to heal any intolerance towards any food, any person, any way of being. So any difficult relationship is about some conflict, some level of tension. Just like I used to sit in front of this beautiful piece of croissant and I would be like, oh, I have resistance to you because I have these thoughts about you and these stories about you. And gluten has done me wrong in the past. We're doing the same thing with the people in front of us. We're doing the same thing with politicians. And we are disempowering ourselves when we do that, because our power is in our nature, is in our fullness, our wholeness, our completeness, and our being. So when we are intolerant of people, when we are pointing a finger and blaming someone else, in this case, I was blaming gluten. I was giving my power away. And without even needing to understand that, the experience I had, which I hope I'm able to explain, which I hope has relevance not just to food intolerance, but to your whole life, is the more you can come back to your center, the more you can be rather than do, the more you can collapse the stories about that involve tension and conflict and inspect them, check if they're true, check if they actually really matter. Check why you are sustaining them with your energy. You might find also that it's easy to actually just drop them and to just sink into the body, sink into the heart, sink into the power that you really are, which you have always been, and to experience and to witness everyone and everything in this world from that place. That is how to heal intolerance. That is how to harmonize any relationship. That is the path of healing, but the word healing becomes rather irrelevant. Healing comes from wholeness, from holy. It is this being with your divinity, your power, and freeing yourself from the strands that have pulled you out of that. So I hope this message serves whoever is meant to receive it. It kind of surprised me that I was inspired to share this story because it's so old to me, but it also is a rather nice introduction to me. If you don't know me, I healed my gluten intolerance age 21. I am now 35. That was 14 years ago. I helped people over about 7 to 9 years heal themselves of all kinds of physical illness using these reflex maps, which you can learn about on my site. There's a very complete course there. And I have just developed my work further and further, collapse the time that it takes, and collapse the necessity of needing external tools whatsoever. That's me. That's where I come from. A lot of people who don't have the capacity to hear and or the inclination to hear this information or to feel called towards it will dismiss. I've been dismissed a lot in the last decade. I have been discredited many times, but the results really speak for themselves, and the message is really over and over the same message. It does not have to be this way. It does not have to be so hard, so painful, so confusing, whatever it is you're going through. It can be easy. It can be beautiful. You are extremely powerful. Thank you for listening.